Hi, Nikolai. Welcome back.
Hi, Adam. Thanks for having me again.
Today, regardless which topic you will suggest, I would like to talk about Java.
Hey, wait, you make it sound like it was my fault that we didn't talk about Java.
Yeah, it was always your fault. We started with, selling illegal games. And then the last time we had even, I actually forgot, some agile topics, I think, right?
Like you're saying it's always my fault makes you sound like my wife.
Oh, yeah.
That's like it's established family. My daughter has the same trait. Like it's always my fault here.
Okay.
So I'm okay with that. Is what I'm saying.
Perfect. So what I would like to cover is what happened between Java 11 and 17, because this is LTS. And then we can cover Java 18 because it's just interesting and fresh.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. In my opinion, what is the biggest Java 17 feature? So if you have Java 11, what you would like the most in Java 17?
Oh boy. So like my if you ask like if you have Java 8, what you like most about Java 9, I would make the joke reply that you have search in Java doc. Now let's see whether there's a seriously joke reply between 11 and 17. Okay, but seriously though, so one thing that is rather small but it's really neat, I think, is text blocks.
Yes.
I think that's something that can just, I mean, it's not going to see, it depends a bit on the code base. I don't think it will see like huge amount of applications in all code bases. Some of them could benefit quite a lot, but I think each code base will have like a couple of places which is really handy that you can finally write like a couple lines of text without having, like specifically if you want to have line breaks, like \n and then, formatting that. So if you have snippets of XML or JSON or SQL that maybe you want to, pass to tests, for example, like, just have them some JSON to throw at some API and see whether that reacts correctly. I think that's like a small change that's really cool.
Which parts are you thinking about? I'm just curious because
which parts? Sorry.
Yeah, which parts of the code base would benefit the most of Java text blocks?
Yes. So for example, if you use something like HQL, or is that what's the JPA query language called? Is that JQL?
Yeah.
So if you use that, that's a place I think you can use it. If you write informative error messages like exception texts, I think sometimes it's handy to put more than like error X occurred. Sometimes you actually want to tell something specifically. It's an error that ends up being user facing, where you want to provide a little bit more detail. Maybe if you have something like in UI and you want to just like have a little bit more text on there, that would come in handy. But I think another big chunk is in tests, right? So for example, when we talk about XML and JSON, like in production code, you don't want to write that out by hand, right? You want to have a library that serializes objects for you to JSON or to XML or whatever. But if you have in a test, you just want to have like, I want to just have these 3 lines of JSON here to check whether something behaves as I expect it to behave. It's just nice to be able to write that in the way that we'd also write it into a file, right? So you can actually kind of read it, because it's not like it's impossible to write XML into a single line. It's just, it doesn't exactly make it more readable.
Yeah, I'm absolutely with you. So I actually, one of my projects, we switched to Java 17 just because of that. And we had to implement already specified JAX-RS, so like REST endpoint. And the nice story about that, I could just copy and paste, for instance, the error codes from the spec and return it as string, which was converted by microprofile to JSON for me. And it was way more easy to, way more readable, and more productive. And so I misused this Java string as a JSON the very first time. Prior to Java 17, I would have to use JSON object and say, add or whatever. So it also works, but this was way nicer. And testing is huge. So what I usually do for my microservices, I'm writing system tests. And in the system tests, I usually need JSON, a large amount of JSON.
Yeah,
and with
I think those are great cases. Yeah.
Yeah, and what you can do here, right? You go to your endpoint, you fire up curl, you get back the text, the ASCII text, so you can copy it as a string, and you already have a good starting point. And then with formatted, for instance, right? With formatted or replaceAll, I still don't know what's my favorite. So with formatted, so you have, the array of strings or whatever you have. But the another trick, even better, is replaceAll, because you can have different template variables inside. So you can have, inside like $request or whatever, and almost looks like ES6 templating then in Java. So I use sometimes formatted, sometimes replaceAll.
Yeah. So if listeners out there would be interested in templated strings, one good reason to get to 17 is that then you are closer to whatever comes in the future. And one thing that could maybe come, I think there's a JEP draft for that, are actually template strings. So that's really very, very early. So the JEP is not even done. So it's like, usually you have like some ideas floating around, and then a JEP draft is basically the next step. It's very, very early in the process. It has to be finalized, has to be submitted. It maybe could take up to a year, like it could take longer, of course, like some JEPs have been around for a long time, but in general, it takes a little time before it then actually is targeted to release. So not promising template strings in Java 19, not at all, but there's a JEP draft for that, and it's pretty cool as well. So you can then have like a better way to write stuff where you have like a multi-line string, like a text block, and in the middle of that, you want to have a variable, a value. And the interesting thing about that specific proposal, by the way, is that, because it's Java, we're going to do a little bit more indirection to get a lot more power. What I find really cool is that you will, like the API will allow you to write your own templates and basically be like, okay, I want to get, the user can write, the developer can write a string and interject these variables there. But then I'm not necessarily turning that into a string as a result. I can take that as input and turn, for example, to a JSON node. So the input would be what basically looks like a text block interspersed with variables in there. And the output would not be a string. The output would be a JSON node or a parsed SQL query or whatever.
So the output is really template, cool. Right? So the output is template.
Sorry, the output is it depends. Like it basically depends which template you use. Like the default template turns something into a multi-line string, but a template can also turn something to something else. As I said, like an SQL statement or.
But this is how it in JavaScript is working, because if we do the multi-line strings with JavaScript, and you can write your own template processors, and
exactly,
and you will get 3 parameters, like array or whatever. So this seems like this. This was my question. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry. Yeah. Exactly. So it's like that. Like you have this this is small. I've used it a couple of times in JavaScript. You write like the small
function,
couple letters before the backticks.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly. So the function name, backticks, and then you have your multi-line string.
Yeah. I think that would at least be similar. Asterisk. I don't understand the JavaScript templating very well, so maybe I'm wrong. But yeah, it sounds very similar. Exactly.
Yeah. And you can actually use it right now already with GraalVM, so you can load your JavaScript and you have it. But we get it with JEP. Yeah, with JEP we will get it with proper Java, right? So.
Yeah, exactly.
Which number it has? Now I'm testing you. Give me the number of the JEP.
Yeah, the draft JEPs don't have understandable numbers.
This was just I just wanted to see whether you know it, right?
Yeah, so I mean, technically it does have a number, but it's the same as the JBS issues. So that's like what 6-7 digits. Okay. So I'm not that clever. Yeah, but I'm really looking forward to that. By the way.
Yeah. By the way, this will be even more useful.
Maybe we see something in 19.
This will be more useful because now it comes. We have to be careful with our agenda. But with the simple Java web server, and with that, I could have already a simple web framework built, with the 2 components. But forget this for a second. What I forgot to tell you, I wanted to congratulate you. You got from a YouTube, like a Rockstar, how to call it? How it's called officially? Rockstar plate or brick or...
Yes, the brick. Yes, it's called the...
how it's called officially?
It's not a badge, is it? It's
a badge.
It's a plaque. Plaque. I think that's the English word, right?
Oh, plaque is
PLA,
like German Plage, right? So.
Yeah, that's why it's difficult to pronounce, not make it sound like. But plague.
How it looks like? Is it like a brick or is it like a piece of? Yeah, I will see it. I will try to to transcribe to my listeners.
Yeah, so I put it back into the packaging, by the way.
Oh.
So it's not on the wall because it doesn't stay there. Also, it's not mine, right? So it's very important to stress that was for the Java YouTube channel, which has 100,000 subscribers, which is like 99.5% not my work. So just to get that straight. But yeah, so it first went to David Delabassi, my colleague, and then he sent it to me, and I've just unwrapped it again. So I think it's aluminum or aluminium, depending on where in the world you are, but I'm not sure. I'm not a metallurgist. I can't really tell you.
Yeah.
And then there's some reflective part there. That's the YouTube logo.
Show me this from. And this looks really nice. It is really nice. It looks like MacBook Pro, a little bit, right? MacBook Pro with a triangle on it.
Yeah. And like this, so it says presented to Java for passing 100,000 subscribers, YouTube, and that's like, I don't know, like you can, like if you run your finger over it, you can feel it. It's
laser, whatever.
But isn't the laser like it's on top though?
Okay,
so the letters are on top.
Okay.
Yeah. So like it's nice. Don't get me wrong, but like the thing itself is, not that very important. Like if I would have worked for 100,000 subscribers on my own channel, I would probably be much more proud of this.
Yeah.
This is something that, most of the other people did the hard work, but also like it's less about the specific plague. It's just nice that there are many people following Java and are interested enough to spend what is mostly their free time, right? I mean, I look at the YouTube analytics. I know that people watch stuff during the weekday at times where probably most people should be working.
Yeah,
but
it's
also
work.
they're doing this in their free time.
If
so
they're
that's
watching
amazing.
you, this is heavy work. This is not like it's fun.
Wow, ouch.
No, I wanted to congratulate you because this is great news that actually Java gets recognition from YouTube, right? 100,000 subscribers is actually huge.
Yeah.
And especially now, because we are already saturated with all the online stuff, in the Corona times. I would say
that's true.
5 years ago, it would be not a big deal. Whatever you did, it was very popular. But right now, everything is online. So I would like really seriously congratulate you to this. This is a great stuff. And what I also did, I watched your show. I forgot what it was, but it was great video. I think Java 17, maybe.
So
Java Records.
so
How you did it, very good. And the other guy, the French guy, I forgot his name. He also
José Pomar, my colleague. Yeah,
I
he
think
does great
so.
stuff as well.
But and he explained something in a coffee shop with a coffee in hand, and I say I have to stop. I have to make coffee. I wanted to have a coffee so bad, so I stopped the video watching his, and I was just curious what you are doing in the Java channel, and it looks professional, fun, and I have to say it's really nice. Whatever
thank you
happens
very much.
there.
That's really nice to hear, and it is a lot of fun. It takes a surprising amount of time to edit a 10-minute video.
This is what I suspected.
You're not actually a video editor.
Yeah, this is what I suspected.
But yeah, it's fun. And it became more fun. Like in the past, editing was just a chore, something that I was really not good at, that I had to do to get a video out. So the part where I script and think and write code snippets, I enjoy that much, whole lot, sorry. And then writing the recording is like, sometimes it works, then it's nice. Sometimes it doesn't work. You leave enough takes and then it sucks a bit. But it is what it is, right? But that only takes, I don't know, like the recording doesn't take long. But then the editing, that can take huge amounts of time. And in the beginning, it was really just a chore. But now I feel like I got a little bit better at it. So I feel like I can have some artistic expression. I'm using the term very freely here.
Yes.
But like it means I can try something out and be like, hey, that's interesting. So it becomes a little bit more fun, but it's still like 80%. It's just like clicking and like just pulling things to the right place and then like cutting frames. It's really like it's a lot of just work that just needs to be done for a couple of hours before anything really happens. And yeah, I'm looking forward to the day where maybe somebody else can edit these videos. Maybe we get some professional video editor. But at the moment, everybody of us, like Billy does videos on Twitter. He does the Sip of Java on Twitter. It's really great. So my colleague Billy Corando does those. Jose does the JEP Cafe, which exactly is in that cafe. And then I do with the newscasts and we all edit our own stuff.
And there were just cookies and great coffee. And he talked about Java records. I think I cannot even remember. I remember his coffee and the cookies. I say, this looks that good. It's crazy. But
since we're talking about records,
because
coming back to your question, so it's not gonna, so I don't have to come back a fourth time and listen to you accusing me again that it's my mistake.
No, now we have Java. This was now serious talk about aluminium stuff from YouTube, and now back to the fun with Java. By the way, your French colleague, he started at Oracle recently because I think he invited me to Java User Group Paris, and he didn't work for Oracle back then.
So he started not much later than me. So I started February last year, and he started shortly thereafter.
So
but he's still organizing the JAC Paris.
Okay, so greetings to him. Nice guy.
Yeah, I will let him know. Right. So, records. Yeah, you were mentioned. He was talking about records. So that's obviously
your second. How to call it?
No, I wouldn't say textbook is the biggest thing. I just think textbook is a nice niche thing that like could be like of surprising value, right? Because it's such a small thing. It's not that easy to think like, oh yeah, I'm going to use that a lot, right? Some big ticket items like records, for example, or maybe lambdas in the past, you see that and oh, I'm going to use that a lot.
Yeah.
But then there are small changes which could go a little bit unnoticed. Like, for example, the collection factory methods in Java 9, which like I use them so often. Like whenever I cannot write code without writing list.of anymore. Like if I go back to Java 8 occasionally and I have to write like new array list and array list add, I immediately get annoyed.
And Map.of even better, right? Well. Map.of even better.
Yeah.
It is somehow feels wrong because it is actually an array, but it works great, right? Yeah, Map.of.
Yeah. Well, no, it's not an array. Map.of has overloads. Map.of has 10 like all of the off methods have overloads. I think 10, going from 0 to 10 arguments to prevent the var args. And then map.of doesn't have a var args variant because you need, like, let's say you want to have a map from string to integer. You want to have string, integer, and Java's type system doesn't allow a var args of like, you know, like 2 different types.
Yeah.
So it has a map of entries, which, which takes a var args of map entries. And the cool thing is, like in the past, occasionally when I need an entry, I think, what was the best way to get one? New abstract map dot simple entry or something. And now you can just write map dot entry, I think. That's a factory method that gives you a map entry. And that's how you create a map of like more arguments. Although I gotta say, like, I rarely use that for more than like a handful is already like the top. Usually I use it for like, in the cases where I want to use list.of, I usually have very few arguments in hand.
Yeah, sometimes more because what I needed often in the cloud, because if you have configuration, you can, if you provision the whatever AWS Lambda in Java, whatever, then you have to pass, key value pairs. And what you can do, you can use Map.of because you can how to call it? You can provision this with Java code already with CDK, so you know what's coming, and then the environment is provisioned, and then you ship your application. So Map.of and List.of is a great, how to call it, space saver because the code is more compact.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. Like it's also just like straightforward to think of, right? It's like creating the map and then putting stuff in there, and then maybe later even returning the map gives you this feeling of, great, I created like, I have a statement to declare a variable and call a constructor. Then I do the stuff that I'm actually interested in, which also has like, map.add, map.put, map.put a whole lot. Yeah. And then at the end I return, it feels like there's so much code more there than I actually want because all I want to have is a map of these 10 pairs. So it's not just like it saves lines of code. It also just gives you the thing that you want to do faster. You don't have to stop and think like, okay, I need that map. Like, let's create a new hash map. You just go Map.of and there you go. And I think those are like small changes. And I think text block is more in line with those. Text blocks is not something that I think will jump out as a big thing, but it's like a cool thing that will come in handy in those places where you can actually use it. But
unless you are working with JSON and REST endpoints, then it's huge.
Yes, you're right. So if you do that a lot, then you will probably immediately see the value of text blocks. But records, records are great. I mean, records is something that
is your second favorite after text blocks. Records?
No, as I said, like I wouldn't say text blocks is my favorite. I'm not sure. Like, if I have to pick a favorite, I want to go with the pattern matching stuff. Yeah. Although it is in 17, it's still not complete, so you can't really use it that much. But just because of how promising it is, I would say that type patterns and sealed classes were probably my favorite, but less from a I use it the most. And more of a I see where this is going perspective.
Okay.
So
now,
that's really
my question was actually what is most useful right now. So I would
see most useful
right now or favorite as well because the potential is pattern matching, of course. But I would say the text blocks. Then I would say even a Switch and a Java records. This would be my personal favorites. But I'm curious about your opinion, so we can talk about that.
Yeah, so I think like when it comes to the biggest impact on code bases, I think it's hands down it's going to be records. I know that a company here in Karlsruhe where I used to work. I'm still in touch with a lot of people working there, and they created their own annotation because they went from LTS to LTS, right? So we went to Java 11. Yeah. By the time Java 11 was out, and the next version they're shipping, so they also have like a 6-month release cadence, and the version that's coming out right now about these weeks is shipping on 17. Yeah. And so that means that they knew about records since they were first previewed in 14, but they couldn't use them. Yeah. So what they did instead is they created their own annotation, which they would put on classes, like basically say like, this is going to be a record. So that then later they would easily find all the places and put in all the replacements. And also that people already knew, okay, if I want to make this a record, I don't want to call this get name. Because, for record, the component accessor is just name. So they knew that they already had to like abide by those rules to make it easier to refactor. And they went through, and I heard there was he's the lead of software development there. He says he sees the Git diffs and just the amount of code that just evaporates, the amount of boilerplate that just goes out the window. And what you remain is with compact code that really not only saves you lines of code, which is probably the least important, but also makes it so much easier to understand what you have in hand, right? If you have something that is could be a record but isn't, and has like 4 components, that's, I don't know, that's like 60 lines of code at least. That's ridiculous. But that's just what it is in Java. And with the record, you can turn that into a single line even, or maybe just like if you do a custom constructor, a couple of lines of code, and you don't lose anything. It doesn't make anything more complex. Like it's not like shorter code can obfuscate things, but that's not the case here. Record is just so much more expressive. You just look at this one line of code and you immediately know what's going on. And that's great. And I think that makes, that will have the biggest impact just because I think many code bases will have a lot of places where they can use records. And so this will be probably the most, visible impact if you go from 11 to 17, I would guess would be records.
I was surprised. I'm using records right now also for JSON serialization and even nested records inside classes. And I was surprised that it actually worked out of the box. I did some investigation before and had to do something, and it works great. And I already saved a huge amount of code because back then I used a class to have, in a JSON, like a key, let's say, Hugo. There was a class mapped to Hugo, and then the class had public attributes. And now this can be just an embedded record, which is one-liner. So in the class you have record, which is line, and second line uses the record, and it works. So a huge space saver. But with records, what's happened to me a couple of times, I was forget about microservices. Now I did a project like CLI tool, and I was really I can use records everywhere. And I started then with records, and then they became they got more logic. And then I converted into classes, interestingly. So I said, okay, now it's no more record a class. So I was a little bit sad, but sometimes you need their behavior, and then what will happen? You get the true classes, which is a good thing. So the records will kill all the DTOs and all the mappers, but sometimes you will start with record and you will convert the record to a Java class.
Yeah, I think that's perfectly fine, right? In both ways. That's just usual development process when you create an abstraction and then you later realize, well, it wasn't quite right, and I want to change that. I mean, of course, the unfortunate bit about that with records is if you first think, what I need is, and that's what records are, a transparent carrier of immutable data. That's what I need here. So you go with that, and then you later realize, no, it's not entirely right. Like I need this hidden field. I really need it for whatever. Like, or I need one field that I can reassign.
Exactly.
Then the record abstraction is not the right abstraction anymore. And that specific situation, the unfortunate consequence of that is that now you have to explode the record into a class, which means like now you do have to generate like a bunch of getters and, the constructor and the fields. And so there is, what we call it, like a hurdle there. Like if you feel the best abstraction would be for this record to not be a record, but basically the same thing, but with, let's say, a mutable field or a hidden field. When I say hidden field, by the way, that means the components are all public, right? So you cannot hide state. That's intentional. But if you realize, no, but there really should be some piece of state that is that is hidden from the public.
Exactly.
Then you cannot use a record. So in those situations,
what I did in this case, I kept the record and used a Java class, and the record was a field of the class. And this Java class, the outer class had, the state, and it accessed the record as immutable. So this makes sense from the abstraction because, the core state, which was immutable, and the Java class added, some behavior and the hidden fields or whatever. So this was this worked well in this particular case.
Oh, that's interesting. So did you then did the class return the record, or did it have its own getters that would access the record component? So when the record had a name component, would the class have its own get name method?
And not all, because usually this is never the case. What I don't like, to generate in advance all the getters and setters, I only return what's really needed. So a subset of the record was needed, and the remaining state was needed for some calculations. So the class didn't have, to return everything. It just returned what was needed from outside, which was a great case for records, actually.
Yeah, so I really think that that's important as well. The maybe records make it easier to distinguish the cases where you actually want to make all state accessible. So this canonical thing in Java that you create fields and then you create getters for all those fields. I think that's like doing that always is a really bad anti-pattern.
Yeah, it is
like
not. It is not necessary.
Actually.
It was created for Java beans back then that the IDEs knew what's inside, for reflection. This is no more needed. This is actually, and you can always create, you can have a class with get and return more than one field. It's also records are great because if you have I don't know, let's do something. let's say Java YouTube channel, and you would like return, you can return the, let's say, the viewers and the amount of records or whatever, or you can record the stats from the class, and the statistics could be a record. And you can create, the record in the getter very conveniently, just, adding the fields on the fly from the class. So a record also a very convenient way to return a subset of class state.
That's actually a good idea. What I thought about with not having that many getters is, that anti-pattern of always creating all of those getters. What I really try to do is when I write code is to more strongly distinguish than in the past about what classes that do something and classes that are something. And things that are something can often be records, and things that do something usually don't have to expose any of their fields, or at least very few of their fields. So ideally not having that. I mean, like in the past, we thought that there was a great thing in Java with classes that you have state and behavior together, which is good in many situations, don't get me wrong. But I think that if you have a class with a lot of behavior, it should not also expose all of its fields as data. Not that there's anything strictly bad with that, but if all classes do that, in my experience, that leads to very tangled code.
Yes.
Where everything does something, but everything also exposes everything, and then everybody uses everything from everywhere, and that leads to code that I found much harder to understand and to refactor. Whereas what I try to do is I said okay, so what is the purpose of this thing? This thing does something. It might have a dozen fields because it needs those, but it tries to hide all of them ideally and just offer functionality as in the form of methods.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas this other thing, which also has a dozen fields, is just that. It's just a collection of these 12 things. Mm-hmm. So now there could maybe be a record. Maybe if in mutability, it won't be a record after all. But the point is, it's still a different kind of thing where I think of it as just a collection of things that it lugs around, and then it can get expose getters and maybe even setters for those. Mm-hmm. And I really think that records help with this distinction, because at least for one of these now, we get a good type to express that. So if we have something that is just the data, we can use a record to express exactly that. This is just data and nothing else. And the language can make use of that with, for example, the construction patterns or whatever. But also it just helps us to communicate to our colleagues and to ourselves in the future what this type is about.
Yeah. There are two cases. We have to close this. But I would say some projects are object-oriented or polymorphic, and the others are more like CRUD, the microservices. Mm-hmm. So in the CRUD systems, you usually get the distinction between behavior and state. So then the state would be, the records, and immutability is great, and then behavior you have somewhere else. So I was in some project which was really hard to do this way. For instance, this was a transportation system project, and this was interesting because you think about this. There are different vehicles with different capabilities, and also different connections between cities. You can take the highway or whatever. And every type has different features or capabilities. And what we did back then, we used Java objects, so proper objects, without exposing all the getters or the state, which was not needed. But the cool story was you had at the end of the day a connection and a transport or a vehicle, and you can say, "Hey, vehicle, here's a transport," and the vehicle would say, "Okay, I cannot because I'm overloaded." Or if you would try, to assign to a bicycle a container, the bicycle will break. So and in such a project, you need, a nicer method. So getters and setters are absolutely pointless because they would just, obfuscate the code. And so my observation is also graph-based systems, object comes with great benefit. And if you're just talking to a database, doesn't matter. So you're just using objects is waste of time because the abstraction is, the table or whatever. And this is my observation. But anyhow, the records are useful everywhere. So you can use records inside the classes, or you can use, records as a data containers to ship stuff outside of the microservice. So great, I would say, and really nice. Yeah.
So one more place where you can actually use records is inside methods as well. And that's not a new thing. I did not know that. That was already a thing, I don't know for how long, probably since Java 1. You can create a class inside a method.
I saw that.
Which is crazy.
I think this is in JEP,
why would
right?
you do that?
In the JEP description.
No. Yeah, it's in the JEP description because they changed the detail there, but that was possible way before. Even now on Java 8, you can go into a method, At least that's my understanding, because I never do that. Why would you?
Yeah.
You can have inside a method. You can just go like, okay, this is class foo with like these 12 fields and these constructors and all of that, which of course you wouldn't, because we're trying to keep our methods short.
You know why? For streams. If you have stream and you would like to map stuff, something like this,
Yes,
like we don't have PR, for instance. PR is not available still in Java, just in JavaFX. But with a record, you could build something like this.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to say, because we wouldn't do that with a class because it takes so much space and want methods to be short. But with the record, it's just one line. And it may sound silly, but it's exactly what you say. I actually think that a general pair type is not bad, but it also has it has no semantics. It's just a pair with first and second.
Yeah.
And it doesn't make the code easy to read. But if you then, let's say, you want to pair a name with an address, both are strings, let's say, which you can then do. You can just write one-liner, record name with address, which has a string name and a string address. And then somewhere in your stream pipeline, you compile these two pieces of data, put them together. And then as long as you take them apart until the method is over, you don't even need to expose that record. So you can have that inside a method. I'm more fascinated by that this is possible and what we could do with that. I'm still not convinced it's actually a good idea to do that, though, because it's still weird and off and, might confuse people. And wouldn't it be better to just pull it like 2 lines above the method? I'm not sure, but I find it very interesting. And I think there's definitely benefit in scoping this type, because if it's in the method, you clearly communicate, no, it's not a general thing, not even in the class.
Exactly.
It's just really just here. I really only need it here. So that's very interesting.
I would say the records declaration looks different, and it is okay to do something like this with a record. I was really opposed, in the AWT and swing times with the inner classes. I hate that. There was lots of code and obfuscated everything. But with records, it's just the declaration is just one single line. And if you have no 2 attributes, it almost looks like a variable declaration, right? With generics, a record, I would say.
Yeah, just like records, name and address, parenthesis, string name, string address, parenthesis. Like, it's a little sad that we need the open and close curly braces behind that. I'm not sure why that is there. It could be there because it would be hard to teach it could be confusing to the readers. It could be hard to teach the compiler otherwise. I'm not sure for what reason, but it's a bit sad. What's sadder, though, is that if your code formatter comes along, it's like, no. We put opening and closing curly braces on different lines. It's like, no, I don't want to put them on different lines. There's nothing in there. So if you use, as soon as you start using records, you really want to make sure that your code formatter is set up so that empty blocks, because in the end that is an empty block, right, with between the opening and the closing curly brace, can stay on one line. That really helps with records.
Regarding the formatter, so what I did for years, I always used the Sun Java coding conventions, because there was no, the Oracle coding conventions are somehow related. They are, of course, because there's the same Java code. It would be actually a great idea to have a JEP with formatter. This is our this is our formatter, what we're using in Java.
But what's Java? You mean in the OpenJDK?
Yeah, for instance. Because
I'm not even sure whether OpenJDK is uniformly formatted, I gotta say. It's a project that lives over 20 years, so I would be surprised if it were, to be honest.
Or, the Sun coding conventions? You have to look at them. This actually describe that, the curly brackets is in the line where the method declaration is. Yeah. And I had lots of discussion with which formatting style we use, and I say, okay, stop the discussion. We use Sun coding convention. This was my answer, and I saved lots of days of my life just to pointing to this URI. And I think with Oracle they rename it to Oracle coding convention. Or if you take a look, there is a page which looks like Oracle or Sun, and actually it would be, I think, a good idea to standardize that, or at least provide us, okay, this is what we are using roughly. It doesn't have to be exact, but it could be a community effort, and it's a good starting point to all formatters, right?
I get what you're saying. I don't think that belongs into a JEP because that's a JDK enhancement proposal, but it would be kind of interesting to more prominently feature what exact coding style does the OpenJDK use and why, so that other people can align with that. Personally, the reason why I'm not super excited about the idea is that I'm a verdant user of tabs. Like, if people don't use tabs and they use spaces instead and I work in their projects, I will use spaces. I'm not one of those crazy people mixing tabs and spaces as indentation on purpose. But, man, I really don't like space indentation, but I think the JDK uses that. So I'm really not excited about the idea that there's even more reason for people using spaces for indentation to point to something like, see, Google uses 2 spaces for indentation, which I have no idea who thinks that's a good idea. And now OpenJDK uses 4 spaces for indentation, which makes more sense to me, but still it's spaces. So, personally, I hope
I want to say I wouldn't care. I would just adopt whatever Oracle suggests here or the Java department suggests, because I mean we get the tooling anyway. We the syntax, the compiler, everything. And in Python, I would say Python deformatting belongs to Python, right? And in Java, we could at least suggest this is the way to format. And actually, all the tutorials from Oracle, they are already formatted as source code. I mean, if you are formatting the source code in a tutorial, you can also say how you did it, and you just can say, okay, this is how we do it, and this is the
There's one problem there. That most code that you see on a website is formatted to look good on the website. That, for example, usually means that line length is shorter. It also means that usually you don't actually use a tab character because many systems still by default create a tab as 8 spaces indentation, which is too large. So usually what you do is you can use with CSS, you can configure a tab to be with the width of 4 spaces.
I know what you're saying.
What my website does.
Java Magazine was the same. I couldn't format it properly because they tell me, to use the day formatting, this Oracle Java Magazine. But you know what I mean? I think would be not a bad idea to suggest something. And with a tool.
I'm just afraid that I will have to stop using tabs because I think they're just so much better than spaces. But other than that, like leaving my personal,
you can ignore it. You're an Oracle employee. I mean, this is but.
That makes me the least likely to ignore. Larry will call me like, "Hey, Nikolai, I heard you using tabs. That's not okay."
Maybe Larry will call you. So it's like, now you destroyed all my open source project with your suggestion. Okay.
Yeah, imagine that. Like the end outcome of that is we get tabs because Nikolai wanted them. Everybody's screwed now.
Yeah. Okay. I think it's a good idea. The more suggestions there are from the community which creates the stuff, the better it is. And then a greenfield project, I can still say I don't like it. I create my own invention, but I'm a consultant. I could say, okay, just use it. If you're not happy, then what do you suggest, right?
Yeah, so to be clear about what you're saying is it is right. Like it doesn't make sense to discuss to seriously discuss code formatting a whole lot. I do have a strong opinion on that, but I would never start a new project and then be like, let's fight over this for 2 days. So that doesn't make sense. There's a lot of value in just pointing to something that let's just use that. And what I find even more important than that is, and I learned that from JNet 5, they break their build if the code isn't correctly formatted. So if you provide a pull request, you will, and the good thing is the build also, we use and JNet Pioneer, my extension project for JNet 5, uses the same logic. It uses Spotless to check, and Spotless breaks the build if the code style isn't right. But Spotless can also apply the code formatter. Okay. And it often does things that I don't agree with because it's really weird about where to break lines and how to break lines if they're too long. But the thing is, who fights a tool? Like that would be foolish. So we just configured it and it's there. And yes, we use tabs, by the way. And that's what it is, right? If you provide a pull request and the tool tells you, sorry, your formatting is wrong, run this command to make it right, then there is no conversation, there is no discussion, there is no nitpicking over, what was
you're right.
Where, which has a lot of value.
But for instance, I used, for years the NetBeans. NetBeans uses, whatever Sun configured, and it looks like the Sun coding conventions. Now I use the Visual Studio Code more often, and the Visual Studio Code comes with built-in formatter. I don't care what it is. But if I start a project, I get asked, which formatting I suggesting, and I say, I don't care, whatever it's inside. And then people expect from me to suggest something, and I don't like to suggest just my stuff, which is already there. It would be nice to have, because there are conventions for Javadoc. There's convention for everything, but there was conventions, Sun coding conventions, but now it is almost forgotten. So I would say, just to make it fresh. And there's already you found this Sun coding conventions.
No, I didn't want to, because I have a loud keyboard. Didn't want to type on the side.
No, this is a more authentic, feel to our podcast.
It sounds like this.
Yeah. Okay, it's very silent now.
Is it? Yeah, the mic is maybe a little bit further away. So what I'm saying is, though, I don't think, by the way, just to go out and say it, I don't think this should be a community effort, because that just means let's invite everybody to discuss tabs for the spaces and where to put curly braces,
suggest something,
and where to put what. Just not even suggest. I think what it just should be is, this is what OpenJDK uses, period. Like, no, everybody should use this, or no, this is a proposal, and no, this is a community conversation. All of that is unnecessary. Just this is what we're using, and we're having a good experience with that. And then everybody can agree, do I like that one? Or do I use, for example, Google has their own style. Which one do I want to use? And basically everybody just says, this is what we're using.
Yeah.
Because like inviting conversation about code style.
You're right.
Oh boy.
You're right. And if you would, for instance, do this, the Java docs examples from Java, they are already formatted with the formatter. I would say you will feel familiar with the whatever they are using, because the code examples inside the Java doc, they also come with similar formatting.
I'm not sure about that, because
at least the curly brackets doesn't start in a new line.
Yeah, that part, yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
so that case is true.
It doesn't have to be perfect, but
but indentation is off.
The indentation
isn't correct.
Yeah, this is pre and this is the pre-tag, I guess. So I'm not so picky about tabs versus spaces. I'm more about how to format Java record. Maybe a suggestion how to format a builder, a dot and method, and just general how we do it, how it looks like Java. Whether there are spaces or tabs from outside looks the same.
Yeah, but I'm not even talking tabs or spaces. So specifically, what I have in mind is, because in JDK 18 there's a cool new feature where you can put your the code snippets that you show in Java doc into its own file, which is great.
Yeah.
And because I looked for examples of code in Java doc, I stumbled into the Java util stream package. And that package has at the very top like a short stream pipeline just to show what's happening. And the indentation on those continuing lines, on the first line you have like that starts at the first position because it says like, I don't know, the result equals blah, blah, and then list.stream or whatever, I'm not sure. But then you have these chain calls that you have the stream pipelines. We have a couple new lines that need to be indented. And they look awfully wide. The indentation looks like it's very much to the right. It doesn't look like the usual double indentation that you would put into a continuing expression. So I fear that some of those are actually formatted more for didactic reasons, or didactic, let's say, with an aim at teaching, and not so much with an aim as uniform structure. Because if you teach something, especially if it's a short snippet, you may make different decisions as to where stuff goes to ideally teach something, compared to if you want to write code, then it's more important that the entire class looks the same, and it's not that important that all the things are aligned that perfectly fine. So I think that's actually an interesting conversation to be had about how do you teach stuff in code snippets. So for example, when Lambdas came around, all of the examples from the OpenJDK team, but also from all the blogs and post talks about this, they all used single letter characters. And I think it's been a huge disservice.
And generics as well. I never understood why.
Yeah, actually,
generics. I always use like, why are you doing this? And I think,
Yeah, exactly. I programmed for years before I realized, like, wait, I can just give generics like a real name.
Today, actually, today I wrote a stream code with T, and I say, okay, I know they use T, but I change it to topic, right? And maybe there is one advantage of using one letter, because if I use proper names, they can interfere with variables or parameters in the method. If you have a stream and you say topic in the stream, it can interfere with the method parameter with the same name topic, let's say.
Yeah, wait, but the generics. Wait.
No, generic streams. I'm talking about streams. Streams map. I'm talking about streams.
Oh, that's what we're saying. Sorry.
Map, map. And I don't know, topic, the arrow. This is what can happen. But I mean, you will find it out, right?
But actually, I think that's if that happens to me, that always points to the fact that something is off. Because if I have, let's say, in a stream pipeline of topics, I want to have a map, and then I write topic and then arrow, and then I also have a parameter called, or an argument called topic. What now? That's a clash there. That's what you described, right?
Filter.
But I realized,
if you would like to filter and search for something, it's a valid use case.
Yeah, but I think something is off then, because these are not the same.
No.
Some of them are the topics that you have in your collection, and the other one, is that the search topic?
Yeah, you're right.
These are different.
You should name
and
it.
That gives me an incentive to give them a different name.
Yeah, you're right.
But you're right. So go back to the generics. Absolutely, they should probably have in general like actual names. I know E and T is common in the JDK, but the problem with the JDK is it's very general. It knows that a stream and a collection can contain whatever.
Yeah.
They could sort of call it element, but I understand the idea, especially from a mathematical point of view, to just give it a short and sweet name. But most generics we write are not that general. They're often limited to something that's comparable or something that's a user.
Yeah.
And I really think we should then use longer names. And same thing for lambdas. I think most lambdas should have the variables in there should have a proper name.
Yes.
But the thing is, if you teach someone on slides or somewhere else, you have a different focus, and sometimes that leads to, well, look how short and sweet this is. Also, then it fits better on the slide and like just looks better. And then everybody does that, and now everybody's stuck with this idea that lambdas should have just a single character name, which I think they shouldn't.
So back to our conversation. Now is your fault again. So Java 17, Java 17. So we had records, we have text blocks, and now about the switch. And I'm actually more excited about the switch statement. How the new switch with the arrows is called properly? Is this pattern matching switch, right?
No, that doesn't really have a name. Like, so switch now has different characteristics.
Switch
that
expressions.
are orthogonal to one another.
This is what I mean.
But technically expression only means that you use it as an expression, meaning it has a value, right? The switch as a whole has a value. That's only what expression means. You can write an old style statement, but use the arrow instead of the colon. That works.
Yeah.
So you can have all of these combinations. You can have a switch that is either an expression, meaning it has a value, or just a plain statement. That's one dimension. The other dimension is you can use the colon or the arrow, and then you can use like just say like a regular switch over like string and integers, or you can have like a pattern switch that switches over any kind of object and then works with type patterns. So these are all different, and in certain details they do behave differently. So for example, the colon has the default fall through, right? Where you have to put in break so it doesn't fall through, which I think that's a really bad default, to be honest. I'm pretty sure that in some code that you write, you can do something clever with the fall through, but so much more problems arose because of that I remember that I would put in a linter, I think it was $5 or something, that would warn me or even create an error for each fall through, unless I put in a comment that says fall through intended, just to express, no, this is not a mistake, it's on purpose. And the arrow doesn't have fall through, which is great. So I really think like this case, and you can use that with like a regular switch statement over integers. You can still write case 5 arrow and then whatever. And so to me, that has quickly become the default whenever I have the chance to write code on new Java versions. Always use the arrow instead of the break. And then whether you use it as an expression or as a statement, that really depends mostly on the surrounding code. But if I have the chance, I use it as an expression. And the main reason for that is that there is some completeness checks in there, because if you use it as an expression, it has to cover all the cases. And so the compiler gives you a little bit more of a support there to make sure that you cover all the cases. And it also makes the code feel to me less side effecty and more functionally, if that makes sense. So what I'm saying is, if you have a switch statement, you're bound to compute, so to redirect the flow of computation somewhere, and basically imperatively say, in this situation, do that, in this situation, do that. Whereas an expression, you lean more towards, if this value, then this is the result, and if that value, then that is the result. And I try to think more in those terms. So I try to use, if it makes sense, I lean towards using the expression over a statement if I have the chance. So then I would use the new switch expressions. But they're freely combinable. That's important to understand.
What's also nice in Visual Studio Code, so if you have switch expression over an enum, so I put an enum, there was warning. So I said, okay, fix it. And it generated all the cases from the enum. So I was basically done, because it already knows there are two slots, or what's called actually in enum, the fields, right?
Yeah, it has enum fields, but that's not what you think.
What is
because a field in an enum.
What are the names in the enums? Do you know? Maybe it's the instances. You know that the enum has two instances, so it creates then exactly values.
Yeah, exactly.
Value
That's what
method,
I thought.
right?
Exactly.
Values. Yeah, exactly. Values. So the enum has 3 values, so it created 3 cases for me, and their default is not needed because there is no. It's complete. So and the use case for that was great because I had to return, depending on requested type, a different hash map or map. So the method was getMap with the enum, and the switch was return switch with the enum, case, arrow, this map or the other map. So it was like 3-liner, very understandable code, and it will grow. So we will maybe get 5 to 10 such values in. So it will be still readable, and I really like it. So I would say this is works really perfectly. And right now, I think I only used expressions as switch statement. So this was immediately usable.
That's very important to understand. Like if you're in the situation that you are, where you have like, okay, I have an enum that has 3 values right now, but I'm expecting it to become more in the future. If you use like a regular switch statement and you cover all 3 cases, then the compiler is fine with that. But if a 4th case arises, the compiler is in general still fine with that. There could be situations where you don't have a return value then, but like in general, the compiler will not care if you do not cover all the cases, which has the downside that if you add one, you don't know where it's missing. And the great thing about using it as an expression is that the compiler will force you to cover all cases. And if you then do not use a default branch, but actually just list all the 4 cases, and in Java, I think 14 also, where this was finalized, you can now also have several case labels, right? So if you have, let's say your enum has 3 values and one of them is important and the other 2 you don't care about in that specific case, you could have case the first value and then default. But you can also very easily now say case the first value and then case the other 2 values. So the second one, comma, the third one, arrow, do nothing. And the benefit if that is, or return the default value or whatever, the benefit in that is if you avoid the default branch, and you do add a 4th value to the enum, you immediately get compile errors everywhere, which makes it super easy to hunt down all the places where you have to think about this, and very reliably too, right? Whereas when you are bound to the regular switch statements, you would add a 4th value, and then you would start, hunting the code base, like, okay, so where's this used, and like to judge where do I have to add cases is much more work. It's very easy now to just add the 4th case and follow all the compile errors. That said, that only works if you avoid the default branch. Now, in some situations, you might still think, no, this is actually fine. I just care about the one case, and all the other cases can stay the default. So now, at the use side, basically, wherever you switch over an enum, you now can make the decision, do I want to get a compile error when the enum changes? If yes, I list all the cases. If no, I just use the default branch. And I think it's really, really interesting to get that distinction. This completeness check will become much more important. Whenever you use patterns in a switch, you will also have to be complete, and not only as an expression as it looks now. Even if you use a switch statement, but you switch over an object, so you have these patterns in there, you still need to be complete. So the idea is, maybe it was a mistake that we allowed switches to be incomplete in the first case. So it could be that all new changes to switch, all new variants, they will always have to be complete. And then maybe down the line, 5 years, 10 years, 50 years, we can at some point say, look, now switch has to be complete everywhere.
Okay, this was my question to you. Will you ever use the old syntax in new projects?
So once again, like you have to think about what exactly the statements or so I will only use colon if I want fall through. Like if I know in this case fall through is helpful, then I will use colon. Otherwise, never.
But will you use it? Do you think you will use it in the next 2 years? The old switch statement.
Actually, that was really funny. Just yesterday, I realized that I had accidental fall through in my project, but it fell through into a case that had a break. So that was good.
Okay.
I don't know.
I think. I don't think so.
I don't know when I intentionally used it the last time. It's rare, and I think
I used that, but this was like what you said. What I did, I said, okay, I know a future case which will come for sure, which is always no bad idea to do such a thing, but I did, and I say okay, and then we can have this behavior here, and then I will extend it, and this made sense. But I think I will do it differently with the new switch statement now. But I also had a case, but the case was very weak. I don't think there are strong killer use cases for the old switch statement.
Well, once again, like if you need fall through in a specific situation, it's nice. And the good thing is the problem with fall through is that it's kind of like devious, and you might not be aware of it, and like you might miss that. But if we start using the arrow form everywhere, except where we actually do use fall through, then that would be interesting, because then you can immediately see, oh, there's a colon here. I better watch out, something fancy is going on here. Whereas when I see the arrow form, I immediately know, okay, I only have to look at the block on the right-hand side. So maybe we can start using that as a distinction in the future. But of course, if you have an old code base, you will not go around and refactor old switch to new switch. That's pointless.
No. I was just curious about your opinion in Greenfield Java 17 projects.
So
this was
projects,
the question.
I would always use arrow unless I really, really need fall through and I don't come up with a better solution.
Exactly.
And I would lean strongly towards expressions over statements wherever possible. I think that will quickly become the default. I mean, the arrow form is just like not having to type break is so good. Like you don't even have to convince people for that.
Exactly. So the conclusion is probably you and me, we won't write, the break statement anymore. And usually, exactly. This is what I also suspected. Okay. So we have to focus on Java 17 still. So there are the three major things, right? Because all the pattern matching, so half pattern matching with instance of where we don't have to cast.
High patterns,
this is exactly. This is also which came between Java 11 and Java 17. I think Java 14.
It was introduced in 14, right? I think finalized in 16. So high patterns is where you can say if you have an object, usually you would say instance of if this object is instance of string. And then in the branch for the if, you would say, well, now I have to cast it to string and do something with it. Whereas in with type patterns, you can say if this object is instance of string s, don't use s. Maybe it's a name or whatever. So write out that, but you can put a variable name there. It looks like it's really cool. Like it's really nice how this old syntax turned out to be so easily extendable because you have like the old object instance of type structure there, but then you just append a name of the variable, which is great because at the end you have a type and a variable name right next to one another. It looks like a declaration. So that coincidentally that worked out really fine, and that gets rid of those casts, and that's great. Important, but just because it became easier to type check and cast probably doesn't mean we should do it more. There are situations where this is a good approach and where this is necessary. But that determination should drive, do I want to use casting and not how elegant is the new cast. So like usually we don't want to do that for various reasons. And so type patterns in if, I think would still be something that you probably want to avoid, or just let's say differently, you want to avoid it just as much as type checking and casting without type patterns. Where it becomes more interesting if we fold it into switch. Because as we just discussed, switches, this is not yet in 17, right? This is going to come in the future. Switches all these completeness checks, and they can apply to those cases as well. And so that means the risk of having to type check and cast, that there are cases that you ignore or that fall through, that you missed accidentally, that risk is reduced, or rather it's zero now, because also if you use type patterns in a switch, you will all get all these completeness checks. But that's a whole different conversation. We should probably meet again and discuss about type pattern matching. Like if we have full-blown pattern matching, what could that look like? What could you do with that? But at the moment, I think type pattern and switch that you can see in Java 17 should just be used in the places where you already had to use type checks and casts in the past. And they do not open the door to more of that because that's usually not helpful to program that way. But sealed classes is also a new thing. Sealed classes you have in 17, which also folds into the whole pattern matching completeness checks. It also does like on its own. Sealed classes are interesting, but not like overly revolutionary, right? So sealed classes just means, or sealed types, I would say in general, hey, this interface cannot have like any amount of implementations, but just these 4 types are allowed to implement that interface. And that makes sense for certain central abstractions in your code, right? Sometimes you have interfaces that everybody can extend and users can extend and all of that. But often you're not. More often you're in a situation where, we're having a billing system here. We have employees, and these employees, they're either, salaried employees or they're freelancers. And if we had a third type, like we have to touch all the code anywhere.
Or open source committers, right? So free workers,
that's
open
easy
source
because
committers,
they get paid zero, so there's that.
Exactly.
Yeah. So in those situations where you know that your entire system is built on the idea that you have like billing freelancers and billing salaried and paying salaried employees, if that's all you ever do, then this generalization of these two, the interface that these two classes implement, cannot be arbitrarily extended anyway. You can't just throw in a third type and then all your billing system will just magically work with that. So in those situations, it does make sense to communicate to to everybody else in the development team, these are the expected implementations. But without the benefits of pattern matching and completeness checks in Switch, there's not much that you do with this. You're not going places yet. So you can do that in 17 already, but it will feel kind of pointless because you don't get anything. What you will get in the future is the completeness checks, because then if you switch over a type that is sealed, the compiler knows, hey, there can only be these two implementations. You don't need default branch, and then you get all the benefits that we talked about earlier. So that's when this will really start to shine. And I'm confident that the next LTS after 17 will give you that, but not yet, not now.
Yeah. I actually found a great use case for the seed classes. I forgot about that. But I think what I did, this was a corner case, but it was really nice. It was also additional information or documentation what the interface is for. Because you had to declare, who implements this thing. And it was actually, it breaks the encapsulation a bit, but it's helpful for documentation.
Yeah, and I mean, there are situations where you want to make clear to your users, maybe you have like an API and you say, look,
exactly,
you can give me an implementation of that interface, but you were supposed to get that implementation from me somewhere else in the first place. So you're not supposed to create your own implementations. I'm just going to make that sealed and prevent that from happening. So there are certain situations now where you can already use it. But as I said, like it's not, you're not going to go go very far with that yet, but you will in the future.
Mm-hmm. I think we covered the major pieces of Java 17, right?
Yeah, we discussed the language features. I think there are two interesting bits. I mean, there are like tons of small things as well, right? Like they always get like performance improvements, like garbage collection and observability, like JFR got improvements and everything. So there's as a developer facing thing that we just discussed, that aspect of Java, just the language. But there's of course so much more. And like there are tons of like small details and small improvements in there. But there are two a little bit larger ones on the API side I want to at least quickly mention. And one of them is socket channels. So you can now use the Unix socket channels. And wait, am I getting this right? Right. Unix domain sockets. That was the name. I was like, it was not Unix socket channels. Unix domain sockets. So, Unix domain sockets are a great way to communicate between processes on the same machine. So that's important. You cannot do this between different machines. You can do it on the same machine because it works with a file handle. Basically, you're communicating with a file handle. And the good thing about that is that it's very fast and it's secure in the sense that it does not open you up to inter-machine communication. So nobody from a different machine can start talking to you because you're not opening a port or anything. So it's fast and secure. And that now also works on Windows because Windows, since I forgot the version, now also implements these sockets. And that means that now Java also, it makes sense for Java to offer these sockets. So if you do inter-process communication on the same machine, you should definitely look at the Unix domain sockets, which were added in 16, because they will probably make your life faster and safer.
Yeah. This is actually what Docker is using. So the default in Docker is if you have the Docker CLI, it connects to the Docker service via not via network. It goes through a file. So need Unix domain sockets. Yeah so this sense. Is and if you would like to have a proper communication and call the Docker daemon from outside, you have to reconfigure this to use proper sockets. So this is a big deal. And in microservice-like environment where lots of stuff is working on the same machine, this is huge. Because if the microservices communicate with each other, this is actually a local call. There are multiple processes, but they are on the same machine. So this can greatly increase the performance.
Yeah, because you're not using any of the entire networking stack is bypassed, right? There's no TCP/IP.
So exactly. Like in memory, it's almost like a method call, I would say.
Yeah, I'm not sure about the exact speed, but yeah, there will be like if you do that a lot, there will probably be a big difference there. And the other one is that random generator API. So a big improvement in 17. So in the past, you had random, secure random, and thread local random, and they're weird. Like they have the same API, basically almost, not entirely. Some methods are missing from some of them, which is super annoying. But while they have the same API, not all of the three extend one another, and also the implementation apparently is a lot of code that is similar or almost the same. So it was up first for internal refactoring to just share code better, but also externally to give this more like a proper structure. So now you have like an interface that's called random generator, which all of these three implement. But more importantly, you also have a random generator factory interface where you don't. In the past, you would say, I want to create a new random, or I want to use thread local current or whatever. But that would bind you to a specific random implementation. If you, for every reason, ever have to change that, that's annoying. And what you can do now is you can use the random generator factory interface to say, give me all the factories, and then I want to filter. Do I need something that has a hardware device? That would be secure random. Or do I need something that has like a state space that is this or that large? Or which method do I want to use? Because the new ones are not necessarily thread safe because that makes them faster. But if I do need a bunch of them, which way do I create a new generator from an old generator, which is important because you want these generators to have the same properties but be statistically independent. You do not want to have two generators that generate the same sequence of numbers. So if you have one generator, how do you get a second one? And that depends on the algorithm, and there are different ways to get that. But you don't have to care about that. What you can say is, look, that's the kind of characteristics that I need. Just give me one. And then you get back an implementation that is not publicly accessible, so you don't depend on a specific type. You just assign this to a variable of the type random generator, which is the interface. And that means also that under the hood, Java can, and in the future probably will, more aggressively, meaning at all, like phase out old algorithms and pick up new ones. This won't change like on a whim. But if an algorithm turns out to be not as secure as was intended, meaning like it's predictable to a certain degree, then it can be phased out as long as there's a new one with the same characteristics. Because then if you just pick an algorithm by characteristics, and there's a new one with the same characteristics, the old one can move out, and you don't even notice. You just get a safer and better algorithm. It could also be faster, maybe, without you having to change any code. And I really think that that's in the cases where we do use random numbers, and I think machine learning is a case where while models are trained, random numbers do become important. So I think that will play a role there. That could be very. It's a bit niche, but it's really interesting.
Not that niche. Also, random numbers and UIDs, you need always UIDs as well. And by the way, it reminds me on executor, right? This was a similar refactoring with the executor service back then, where you just specify, I would like to have this thread pooling, and then there was like a builder. You say, okay, new fixed thread cache pool with this amount of threads, and you got back, the thread pool. And the implementation was swappable. This sounds to me like similar.
Yeah, it's like
similar change.
Yeah, the general idea
like build a pattern.
The general idea is what you describe what you need, but you don't care about the specific implementation, which is important to be able to evolve those implementations. And I think we can really see how this changes in general how we code. I also started like using personally my own code. Yes, rely less on constructor calls and try more to do this like static factories, or consider what would be a good interaction to use here instead of just call new and the name of the class, and then I'm bound to that. So really, just like we wouldn't hand around array list, for example, at the moment, we'd probably use list or collection interfaces as a type for parameters and return values. I think in the future, the same will apply to random numbers, for example, where you would then turn around random generator and pass that one around instead of, which also, by the way, makes it much easier to inject your own random generator for tests. If you already rely on the interface and you get that injected, because what's common right now is to create a new random where you need it, which makes it super hard to test. But in the future, if you like more consciously get like, I just want to have the random generator injected, just like I would have all my other dependencies injected into the constructor, then in a test, you can just, I'll give you an interface, an implementation of that interface. And if it becomes important for the test, I can give you one that only returns 0, 0, 0, 0 or whatever. And that makes that much more testable.
Very good. I have to invite you back for Java 18 and your open source project. I would like to know more about your, what do you say, JUnit?
Pioneer, we call it,
Pioneer. I would like to talk about the Pioneer because it sounds like a fun and interesting project.
Yeah, let's do that. I'm about 18, by the way, for your audience. I just put out a new Inside Java newscast. Well, depending on when this airs. But there is a new Inside Java newscast from March 10th that discusses everything about JDK 18. So it goes through all the JEPs, gives gives an overview and links to the documentation, links to more detailed presentations and other newscasts that we did in the past. That's a great way to get a first impression in 10 minutes, and then from there to branch out in whatever interests you most.
Is the Java newscast the podcast, or is this Java newscast something from you?
Inside Java is like, that's a Java thing, right? It's inside.java, that's the website, and that's like whenever somebody says Inside Java, if you just go to inside.java, you will find it there. What we have there is a bunch of different things. There's the podcast that mainly David Delabessi, but also Chet Aramura are doing occasionally. Those are great. They're conversations like this one, but with more, with at least one competent partner burn. No, what's usually happening there is like somebody who actually worked, for example, on the random generator API will sit down for an hour and talk about that. So that's very interesting. So that's the podcast. The newscast is something that I do on YouTube, on Java's official YouTube channel. But if you go to inside.java, you can see newscast at the top there. Then there is the JEP Cafe that you mentioned that's actually the name of the show, by the way. José's show is called JEP Cafe. And then because we don't have enough coffee puns yet, Billy decided to call his Monday tweets about Java, Sip of Java. So that's every Monday he brings out like a 1-minute video. So that's all because we're all developer advocates with Oracle. And so the Inside Java is basically the roof under which many of these things takes place. And the idea is that it presents, stuff that goes on within Java. And then there's dev.java, which is the new website, which contains like huge amounts of documentation and how to get started and a little bit how to get involved with the community and development. That's there as well.
So we all will have to watch your video 10 times. Then you get the next golden or titanium plate, right? So this is our goal now.
This is based on on subscriptions. So you all have to create a dozen sock puppet accounts and then subscribe with those. That's what we need.
Oh, so we need, then we have to create sub accounts, so fake accounts and subscribe to your show.
Yes, please. Yes, exactly. Okay, that's how we got the first 100,000.
Okay,
so just to make sure, in case it wasn't obvious, that was a joke. The interesting thing, though, is to be honest about those 100,000 subscribers. If you look at the videos, we would if you have 100,000 subscribers, you would hope for more views. And I think it's obvious that many people subscribed like a long time in the past, right? So this 100,000, I have to take this with a grain of salt. I think there are a lot of people in there who subscribed and maybe don't watch a lot of Java content on YouTube because it's work. And I understand when people at Friday evening, they don't want to look at work stuff. So I think the active subscriber base is much smaller, and that's why I'm all the more interested to get more people on board and to watch that stuff. Yeah. And over the last year, we've really worked hard to make sure this is not just like, hey, a new conference happened, here's 50 conference videos, but that there's actually like interesting things that what are happening right now.
Yeah, exactly.
For example, José in the JEP Cafe built a Wordle checker, so that was super topical. He used pattern matching and streams and all of that to write a Wordle checker. And or solver, I should say, probably. So so that's the kind of stuff that we're doing there right now, and I'm really and basically, so mentally, for me personally, my zero line is the number of subscribers we had like last year around the time when we started, which I don't actually know anymore. It's 90-something thousand. So that's like the number of subscribers.
So like edutainment, I would call it. So it is really fun to watch. It's not like dry conference talks, but it's really fun to watch. And this is what I wanted to say. How many subscribers do you need for the next plate?
I think it's 1 million, actually. I'm not sure.
Oh, so there's a wait. Yeah. Okay, then we have to record a couple of podcasts.
So everybody's like, oh my God, that's never going to happen. I'm not sure.
So the suspicion about the one inactive subscribers, if Java were a legacy language, old language, I would suspect, that the old subscribers are no more there. But Java is fresh and dynamic, so I would say they are just on vacation somewhere. Everyone is active on your channel. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, so that's a good thing, right? So we got lots of comments, and it's really like there is like a small community forming there. Also, you can see things on Reddit. And what I love to do, by the way, is like just pick up community comments or something that does happen on Reddit or other conversations that happen, and to talk about those. So, for example, I had a video about optional the other day. I love talking about optional. Man, there's only a matter of time before we have tabs for the Spaces video. I see that coming already. But anyway, so I love talking about optional. And there was an interesting conversation about optional on Reddit, and I just had to jump in and just, contribute a little bit as well on my end. So that was something that I find really interesting is that, we always talk about the Java community, and it is huge, and it exists in so many different places, on local meetups and at conferences. But also in the internet where there are lots of different niches, right? Like you have your own community that focuses around Atom and Java. And so everybody, I think, has a different niche basically to this. It really feels like we're building one here. We have one here where there are lots of interested viewers and listeners, and also the podcast that gets views as well. We put that on YouTube, I think, as well, occasionally. Yeah. So those are all things that are really fun at the moment to work on. And to be able to, do this and talk about Java, not just on your own free time, but as part of something bigger and something that builds a community.
Yeah, thank you. So next time we will talk about Java 18.
Let's do that.
Perfect. Thank you. Where people can
Thank
find you? This is the standard question, but you have to answer. What is your handle?
Oh, yeah,
Everywhere?
it's NipaFX.
Exactly.
NipaFX on Twitter, on Twitch, on YouTube, and nipafx.dev is my website.
Perfect. Thank you. See you next time.
Yeah, see you. Bye, Adam.